Now, this is of course going to be a follow-up video to the one I did last weekend, where I asked you all the question, what do you think the big reveal about the Force will be in Episode 8, assuming of course there will be one in the first place. And once again, I must say thank you to everyone who left comments giving your thoughts on this topic. You all make it very difficult, in a good way, to pick the ones I highlighted in this video. Anyway, let's jump right in with our top rated comment, which came to us from Vance Wallace, who brought up a Japanese flyer that was released several months ago, basically promising that there would be the biggest reveal in the history of Star Wars coming in Episode 8. And even though I'm by no means an expert in the way movies are advertised in Japan, when I brought this up a couple months ago in a video, I did have several people tell me that this was pretty much a common practice in Japan, advertising a movie to be shocking or to reveal something huge. Now, that of course doesn't mean there won't be a huge reveal in this movie, because I think there almost certainly will, which actually might be one of the problems The Last Jedi faces. I think a lot of us, maybe all of us, are going into this movie holding our breath waiting for something big to happen, which, when you know something is coming or you're looking for it, will likely lessen its overall impact, even if it is truly huge and shocking. Just imagine if before you saw The Empire Strikes Back for the first time, someone told you to be ready for some big huge truth to be revealed. Now sure, when Vader tells Luke he's his father, it's still going to shock you, but not in the same way it would have if you hadn't been expecting anything, or if you'd been completely blindsided by it. Now, one of my personal favorite comments, which I very much encourage you to pause and read in its entirety, came to us from Katarina, and though she made several great points here, the one I'm going to focus on is about the Midi-chlorians, and how not long ago Pablo Hidalgo of the Lucasfilm Story Group brought them up and talked about how they very much highlighted why the Jedi of the prequel era had failed, because instead of worrying about an individual's connection to the Force, they were more worried about blood tests and numbers. And I think one of the things The Last Jedi is very much going to do is put the awe and wonder back into the Force. Yes, we're likely going to get it explained in a new and exciting way, and maybe learn more about it than we've ever known before, but at the same time, I think it's only going to deepen the mystery, not lessen it. It's going to answer a few questions, but create tenfold more. And I think that's all a part of maybe the most important thing this movie needs to do. It needs to make the Jedi truly feel special again, because though you may disagree with me here, and I do like the prequels, I think they, and the 10,000 Jedi they showcased, may have diminished that feeling of wonder I think most of us got about them from the original trilogy, which is again one of the reasons why I think so many disliked the Midi-chlorians. They believed it started to explain and quantify the Force in a way that greatly contradicts what we hear Obi-Wan and Yoda say about it in the original trilogy. And speaking of Midi-chlorians, which I know is everyone's favorite topic, I have to bring up a comment by Jonathan Rotten, who has perhaps one of the best ways I've ever heard to truly start to rectify the problem of them, and that being that they are attracted to those already strong with the Force, not that it's their presence that makes one Force sensitive. And I think that's a great idea, to think of these little creatures as simply being attracted to those with the gift already, and that they're not the ones who actually bestow said gift, if you will. Now, moving on to the topic of balance, which I brought up in the initial video because I do think we're going to learn a great deal more about it in The Last Jedi, including perhaps a way that, at least Luke feels, can bring the Force into some type of lasting balance. Well, as I said then, and others echoed in the comments, I do think they need to be careful how they approach this, because the first 6 episodes of the Star Wars saga showed how, ultimately, Anakin did balance the Force. And yes, I certainly get and agree that there needs to be some type of great conflict between good and evil on a galactic scale for this truly to be a Star Wars movie, or at least one that's a part of the saga. And as Aaron Cook brings up, there needs to be some type of clean break so that they can make a new movie that have stakes that make us care about the outcome, and that's hard to do without some new great threat arising. Nevertheless, I still feel like you have to be careful here. You can't just make Anakin's story feel like it wasn't that important and render the first 6 episodes of the saga more or less irrelevant in regards to what's happening in the sequel trilogy. In other words, the first 2 trilogies, especially when you consider how beloved they are, can't just be little more than a setup for what's happening now. They have to continue to feel like an important part of the overall story, and like there's a natural progression, not a massive separation. Though of course, as Marvin Nano pointed out, it'd be hard to render the original trilogy more irrelevant than the old expanded universe did. Anyway, maybe what this all means, maybe how to make the sequel trilogy feel like a natural progression of the greater story, if of course the Force truly wasn't in balance after Return of the Jedi, is to have Anakin Skywalker be a bigger part of this trilogy than any of us are even guessing at right now, which of course is a possibility that lends itself well to those who think Rey is the reincarnation of Anakin, which is a theory I'm not personally all that fond of, but who knows. Then again, maybe the reason Anakin was able to become a Force ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi was because he hadn't balanced the Force yet and needed to do something after death, and the big reveal is going to be what that something is. And sure, that's unlikely, but we don't really have a good explanation as to how Anakin was able to become a Force ghost, because if you've seen the Yoda story arc from Season 6 of the Clone Wars, you know becoming one isn't all that easy. And if you're going to say that Anakin's sacrifice at the end of Return of the Jedi didn't balance the Force, then he better, in some way, shape, or form, still be a part of bringing about that balance. And honestly, though this is just my personal opinion, Anakin's Force ghost showing up, and him being a part of this trilogy, even if it's just a small part, is of the utmost importance, because he could easily be the thread that ties all three of these trilogies together beautifully. Then again, as Andrew Odette brings up, once upon a time, when there was just the original trilogy, this wasn't about the story of a prophesized one trying to bring balance to the Force. It was a story of a son trying to redeem his father. And one thing this new trilogy needs to do is make us love and care about these new characters, to make it a personal story set within a large conflict, which is what the original trilogy did beautifully, and what the prequels failed to do for many people. So honestly, perhaps the reveal in this movie isn't as important as making sure this movie makes us care about the fate of these new characters, making sure we care about what happens to Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo Ren, and all the rest. Because if we don't, will any huge reveal about the Force even matter? Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought about this video, and to give your ideas for what next week's question should be, keeping in mind it will be asked before The Last Jedi comes out, and the follow-up video will come out after. So again, please leave your comments below and your question ideas, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.